With the hatch closed behind you, Vanessa's yelling is immediately cut off, and all you can hear is the gentle hum of the frame's subsystems. Once inside, your eyes quickly adjust to the low light, with the only sources of illumination being the occasional backlit dial or readout. You pause for a moment and grit your teeth. This was the first time in years that you'd been inside the cockpit of an armored frame. It might be a new model, but it was pretty much exactly how you remembered it. Snapping back to the present, you do your best to head off the thoughts that you know will follow your reminiscing by taking a look around the cockpit to see where you would be sitting. Although the majority of a Juno's cockpit is taken up by the pilot's seat, which sits in the center, mounted on a series of shock absorbers, there is space on either side which allows for the addition of a temporary passenger seat to be mounted on the pilot's. Sure enough, Dalton has attached this fixture onto the right-hand side of the seat currently occupied by Hansen. You stash the PST in the file the chief gave you at the rear of the cockpit. Once they're out of your hands, you pull on your helmet, fastening your suit's final seals, and then strapping yourself into the passenger seat. Whilst you do up the buckles, you look across at Hansen, who you realize hasn't said a single thing since you entered the cockpit. You had been too preoccupied with getting away from Vanessa to notice, but now that you're actually paying attention to the ensign, you see that his chest is rapidly rising and falling with every breath. On top of that, his hands both grasp the flight sticks, squeeze them tightly, and release them, a motion he repeats over and over. Despite the fact you're looking right at him, he hasn't noticed you. Instead, his focus seems purely on the monitor in front of him. Hey, Ensign Cruz. Are you, okay? There's a slight delay, but a second after you ask, Hansen releases his grip on the flight sticks and turns to face you. The intense expression he had just had suddenly replaced by his normal countenance. What? I was just asking if you're okay. Of course I'm okay! What are you talking about? We're not all cowards like you who can't even launch an AF. You take a deep breath in and exhale slowly as you look away. You weren't sure what you'd been expecting, but at least Hansen seems like his normal self. Thankfully, any follow-up from him is cut off by Vanessa's face appearing on the comms screen and her voice on the frame's speakers. Gun-Dog 1, this is Lieutenant Lord. It is 16:30, Jovian Standard, and the mission has begun. Please confirm you're ready for launch. Copy that, Lieutenant Lord. This is Ensign Cruz in Gun-Dog 1. All systems ready for launch and waiting for authorization. Understood. Authority granted. Stand by whilst you're transported for takeoff. Although the Juno's monitors haven't turned on yet, you can tell that the reverberations you feel are coming from it being lowered from the hangar and out of the underside of the ship. Activating all systems. Now. All at once the monitors come to life, illuminating you and Hansen with their glow. Gun-Dog 1 ready! Gun-Dog 1 releasing restraints. Gun-Dog 1 launching! Once the armored frame is free of its restraints, Hansen slams the flight sticks forward in unison, sending the Juno hurtling away from the Gun-Dog, and causing it to shake with the acceleration. As the cockpit shudders, you unconsciously grab onto the straps, keeping you in the passenger seat, and squeeze them tightly. With the frame continuing to accelerate, you do your best to keep a neutral expression, but despite this, Hansen looks across to you and notices your grim appearance. What's the matter, Lieutenant? Feeling flight sick already? No, I'm fine. You lie. Sure, just sit back and watch how a real pilot handles an AF. Although you thought Hansen had launched at maximum thrust, he somehow managed to find an extra burst of acceleration, causing the cockpit to shake further, doing nothing to help the nausea you feel. Fuse her up, sir! Your helmet stays on! Eventually, Hansen eases up on the acceleration, and the juddering stops. Although you're still slightly nauseous, you slowly begin to feel less like the little food you've had time for today will be reappearing inside your helmets. As the Juno continues to cruise forwards, you and Hansen both sit in the near silence of the cockpits. With no real indication of distance between you and the O'Brien, or the speed you're traveling, it's difficult for you to keep track of time, and the journey drags on. There's no way for you to be exact, but it feels like at least half an hour has passed with neither of you saying anything. Eventually, the oppressive silence, coupled with your increasingly desperate desire for a distraction, forces you to think about something you never thought you'd do. Willingly start a conversation with Hansen. I think we started with an apology. I shouldn't have started a fight back on the first day. It was unprofessional of me. And yeah. Hey, so you stop yourself wondering whether this is a good idea. You'd spent some time thinking about it after Cassie's response, and your actions had begun to weigh on your mind. In normal circumstances, you'd have never brought it up again, but considering that you and Hansen were both stuck together like this, you thought now would probably be the best chance to make things right. I wanted to say about the other day. What, when you threw that sucker punch to try to impress your girlfriend? You hold your tongue and calm yourself. True to form, Hansen wasn't making this easy, but you'd committed yourself to the moral high ground, and you weren't going to let him make you lose it. Yeah, that. I just wanted to... Because that was a really weak hit. Better rougher than that from girls back in Europa during shore leave. So what about it? You saying you want to go for round 2 when we get on the O'Brien? I just want to say that... I'm sorry. Whatever. Should we mention the captain's report? I know the captain said not even read it, but like... You know, he was in the same squadron as me. That was decimated, due in large part to her actions, like... He deserves to know, even if he is a bit of a jerk. As the two of you continue to sit in silence, and you watch Hansen making occasional minute adjustments to the flight path of the Juno, you realize something. When you'd read the report in the captain's quarters, you'd been shocked, hit with a gut punch of realization. What had happened to you at the battle above Lunar could all be traced to one woman. Maris Bartemius, your captain. Except it wasn't just you who had been there that day. You weren't the only one who was on board the ship that had been affected by your actions. Hansen had fought for his life, as Calic Flight was wiped out around him, and he had to survive in the combat zone for over 12 hours. What had happened to Hansen when he blamed you for it? It hadn't been your fault. Now finally you knew whose fault it was. The realization hung over you as you grappled with the situation. It's not like you were any closer to dealing with this information. Was there even any way that knowing could bring you closure? You couldn't bring back Calic Flight or any of the other pilots or crew of the ships that had been lost. But still, if someone else had known, would you have wanted them to tell you? Would telling Hansen do you any good? Would do any for him? These thoughts almost overwhelm you as you try to wrestle with what you should do, until suddenly you just blurt out, "When I was in the captain's quarters, I found a report." What? You take a deep breath. You started now, and there was no going back. When I was in the captain's quarters, looking for the codes to reactivate the Gun-Dog, I found a report in the captain's desk. Okay, why are you telling me this? It was about the battle above Lunar, 4 years ago. As soon as you mention the battle, you hear Hansen take a sharp intake of breath, and his flight sticks creak as he squeezes both of them. In an instant, his whole body goes rigid. It was about the reason the enemy were able to outflank us, why they're able to break through E-field. You see Hansen's expression shift into a grimace, but he still doesn't say anything. It was because Captain Bartemius, she was Rear Admiral Bartemius back then, she made an order that pulled the ships away from our rear defensive line. It left us wide open, it's why... Why the hell are you telling me this? Hansen yells, his fist lashing out and striking the control panel to his left side. Because it was her. She's the reason. She's the reason why we had to deal with what we dealt with. She's responsible. Who Who cares? What difference does it make? It's this whole time it was... I know what this is. This is you trying to worm your way out of your responsibility. What? No, it wasn't my fault. It was... Shut up. Don't try to get out of this. It doesn't matter why it happened. You weren't there. You weren't there when we needed you. You were. It wasn't my fault. Just shut up. This time Hansen's fist connects with the side of his seat that yours is mounted to, making the whole thing shudder and activating the shock absorbers. I just thought you had the right to know. With that, the two of you fall back into an uneasy silence. This time, though, you have no desire to rekindle any conversation, instead allowing the silence to stretch on for the remaining duration of the journey. With other sounds beyond the almost imperceptible background noise of the cockpit, and the Juno's monitor showing nothing but stars, your mind drifts, bouncing from thought to thought. The warmth of the cockpit and the gentle vibrations caused by the shuddering of the Juno's engines cause your thoughts to idle and slow. Eventually, without realizing it, you begin to drift off to sleep. You're almost completely gone when both you and Hansen sit upright and fix your attention on the main monitor. Although there's nothing to see beyond the stars and the visual indicator, you know that this means the O'Brien is close by. We're here. Hansen mutters to himself as he begins to flick switches on the control panel to his side. You watch silently as he works the pedals and flight sticks to reduce the Juno's speed. Gun-Dog, this is Gun-Dog 1. We've got target lock on the objective. I repeat, this is Gun-Dog 1. We've got target lock on the objective. Hansen scowls at the communication screen as it returns nothing but the static and an indication that it hasn't picked up any incoming signal. He quickly resets the switches on the control panel before activating them again. I repeat, Gun-Dog, this is Gun-Dog 1. We've got target lock on the objective. Do you read? Piece of junk. His foot strikes the paneling underneath the main monitor, causing it to flicker momentarily, but doing nothing to help obtain a signal. With the O'Brien now visible on the screen, you remain silent as Hansen continues to deactivate and reactivate the Juno's transmission system. Gun-Dog, this is Gun-Dog 1. We've got target lock on the objective. I repeat, Gun-Dog, this is Gun-Dog 1. We've got target lock. God damn it, Lord. Where the hell are you? Hello? Hello? This time Hansen's fist strikes the main monitor. Thankfully for both of you, the reinforced glass of its screen remains undamaged. You move as far away from Hansen as the restraints of your temporary seat will allow. You always knew he was hot-headed, but that didn't make this any easier to deal with. I mean, leave him to it or try to calm him down. I think if I try to calm him down right now, it'll just be seen as, like, patronizing. So, this is how he rolls, this is his workflow, who am I to judge? You cross your arms and look away as Hansen continues to attempt re-establishing contact with the Gun-Dog. Each time he does, his efforts are met with the same familiar static. Come on, what's wrong with this piece of crap? Gun-Dog, come in! This carries on for a few more minutes, but you do nothing to attempt to offer a solution or solve the problem. In his current mood, you don't feel that Hansen would take any suggestion well. Eventually, he throws himself back in his seat, causing both his and yours to rock. As you steady yourself, he grips the twin flight sticks and increases the frame's thrust. Fine, not like we don't know what we're doing. This is Gun-Dog 1. In case anyone out there can actually hear us, we're approaching the JFS O'Brien. We're carrying out the visual inspection of the O'Brien now. With the O'Brien now close enough for you to actually make out its finer details, Hansen decelerates the frame, bringing it to nearly a complete stop. Deftly adjusting the Juno's orientation, he then begins to circle the Swift-class ship, and the two of you focus on the monitor, trying to identify anything out of the ordinary on the O'Brien before you get closer. Wait a second, is that? You point to the O'Brien's main airlock, and Hansen quickly sets a camera to zoom in on it. It's open. Wide open. Looks like someone's tried the same stunt as you. No, that's not it. I closed the thickened airlock door behind me. Both of those are open, which means... Would that mean the entire ship is deoxygenated? Ship must be completely depressurized. Yeah, if this happened when the power was off, none of the emergency bulkheads would have been able to close. The two of you sit in silence, both considering what you've just found out. If the same thing had happened to the O'Brien as the Gun-Dog and someone had opened both airlocks, then what little breathable air was left on the ship would have been sucked out into space. Well, you've still got a mission to do. Come on. You nod silently in agreement as Hansen, apparently sobered by that realization, moves the armored frame towards the airlock. This isn't necessarily the end you think. You think. If some of the crew were lucky, they might have been able to get their spacesuits on before they ran out of air. They'd be running low on oxygen by now, but... This is Gun-Dog 1, docking with the O'Brien. Now only meters away from the other ship, Hansen brings the Juno to a complete stop, and with a surprising amount of delicacy has it reach out with one arm, grabbing hold of a protrusion from the ship and anchoring itself. Well, I mean, technically there's not really such a thing as coming to a complete stop in space. Right? It's all about, like, your point of reference. Right? Like we might bring ourselves to a stop relative to the current velocity of the ship, but with, like, very little in the way of friction and the fact that there is no real, like, objective point of observation. Right? Everything is spinning around everything constantly, then, like... Anyway, not to be too pedantic, but... Alright, let's go. In a well-practiced motion, Hansen releases himself from his seat's harness, moves forwards, and grabs the lever to open the cockpit's hatch. As soon as it's open, you feel the rush of the cockpit's air escaping. Meanwhile, Hansen pulls himself out and steps into the airlock. Having a slightly harder time with the straps on your harness, it takes you a few moments longer to release yourself. Once free, you gather up the PST and the instructions the chief had given you before making your own way out of the Juno. The two of you tentatively make your way from the airlock itself through the room beyond. Although nothing is obviously broken or wrong, the fact you're standing in an area identical to the one on the Gun-Dog, but open to space and completely uninhabitable, sends shivers down your spine. You look to Hansen and see him mouthing something that you can't hear. Oh, we should turn on the radios, right? You continue to stand there in confusion as Hansen wordlessly gestures at you until he looks exasperated. It takes you a moment, but you realize what's going on and reach up to the radio on your chest panel, flicking the switch that activates it. It's about time you figured that out, sir. Hansen's voice crackles over your helmet's speaker. Unlike the Juno, where the cockpit was pressurized so you could hear each other, you now find yourself standing in a complete vacuum where no sound can travel. So what's the plan? You turn to survey the empty void of the airlock. The first priority given by the captain was assisting the crew of the O'Brien to get their ship back online, but judging the current state of things, you weren't sure you'd have much luck with that. The plan. You say to yourself more than to Hansen as you go over the current situation in your mind. That's right, Lieutenant. The plan. Right now, you've got rank, so without Lord screeching down our comms line, this is on you. Unless you're after a trip down memory lane and want to sit in the Juno's cockpit whilst I do everything. A mix of shame and anger swells inside you as you bite your tongue to not snap at Hansen with the first thing that comes to mind. Stow it, Ensign. Despite the way he said it, he wasn't wrong. With nothing coming from the Gun-Dog, you were now the highest-ranking officer involved with the mission. Alright, the first priority was to assist the crew. It doesn't look like anyone's going to be in this part of the ship, but we still need to try. Since I've used the PST before, it's going to be easier for me to carry out that search. Whilst I'm doing that, you can start removing the ship's black box. You hold up the manila folder that the chief had given you on the Gun-Dog, and Hansen takes it from you, clumsily flicking through it with his gloved hands. It's on the bridge, huh? How are we going to get up there? Same way I did it on the Gun-Dog. Come on. You turn around and head into the ship, eventually arriving in the central hub. Okay then, Lieutenant, now what? As you walk past Hanson, where the maintenance hatch is located, next to the elevators, you take the opportunity to quickly switch your radio off. Tell Hanson exactly what he can do next, then switch it back on. What's next, Ensign, is this. You run your fingers down the seam between the panel and the wall, and quickly find the catch. Unlike the one on the bridge, you're able to fit your suit's fingers into this one, and you quickly release it. As the hatch comes away in your hands, you wait to feel the sensation of air rushing out of the crawlway. Unfortunately, you feel nothing, confirming one of the fears you had about the ship and her crew. Placing the hatch down, you turn to Hanson, saying nothing about your discovery, and instead gesturing to the ladder. On the top of this ladder, you'll find another panel like this one. That leads into the bridge. To release it, all you need to do is push on the catch from the inside. Think you can handle that? What do you think, Lieutenant? You're not dealing with some dumb security officer here or anything. I'll punch you, it's done. With a swagger that's only exaggerated by the bulk of his suit, Hanson strides past you, steps into the access tunnel, and heads up the ladder. You take the opportunity to turn your radio off again and tell him what you really think about pilots. Once you're done, you switch it back on in case he sends any transmissions. Now that you've sent him to work, it's up to you to try and find any survivors of the O'Brien's crew and use their help to get the ship back online. You look around the empty central hub, the same silence that previously filled the Gun-Dog now filling your helmet. After a moment of contemplation, you head towards the first place you think it may be fruitful to explore. Well, so the elevators aren't going to be working. So we're either going to the foreside thoroughfare or the aft thoroughfare. Really? Let's just try the foreside first. That's where more of the stuff is located. As you move from the central hub towards the darkness of the foreside thoroughfare, a movement catches your eye. You stop to peer into the darkness ahead and catch sight of a silhouette in the distance. Hi, who's there? I'm from the Gun-Dog. You call out using your radio to broadcast yourself. We're to help. Come back. As the figure vanishes into the gloom, you dash after it, eventually arriving at the end of the long corridor that makes up the foreside thoroughfare. Having headed past the two crew corridors, and seeing no one down either, you move towards the end of the corridor, a dead end when considering the doors to fire control, the mess hall, and the hangar are all sealed. Did I just imagine it? You turn around trying to see if you'd missed something, but with no signs of life here aside from yourself, you begin to doubt that you saw anything at all. This mission must be getting to me. Better get this over with before I start seeing things. Seems a lot of the doors are sort of ajar though, right? It's like... As you make your way through the gloom of the foreside thoroughfare, you absentmindedly knock on the low-gravity warning sign just before the double doors that lead into the ship's hangar. Placing the portable sub-terminal by your feet, you hammer on the doors with your fist, hopeful that if anyone's there, they'll hear you and signal and reciprocate in kinds. But in space, no one can hear you knock on doors. After around 10 seconds of this, you stop and press your helmet against the door. If there is any noise in there, the vibration should travel through the door and onto your helmet, allowing you to hear it. Right, yeah, I guess if you have direct material to material, you could still hear that way. I guess someone's in there. What? Something's going on in there. Hey! Can you hear me in there? You call out, resuming your hammering on the door, when you get no response. Hey, whoever's in there, we're from the JFS Gun-Dog. We're here to rescue you. Can you hear me? There's definitely someone in there. While you're still not getting an obvious response, knowledge that someone is in there fills you with a sense of urgency, and you hurriedly set your suit's radio to broadcast. This is Lieutenant CMeeCraft of the JFS Gun-Dog. We're here to provide assistance to any crew on the JFS O'Brien. I repeat, this is Lieutenant CMeeCraft of the JFS Gun-Dog. We're here to provide assistance to any crew of the JFS O'Brien. Come on! You slam your fist into the hangar door one more time. Despite the signals that someone was still alive in there, with no way to get into the hangar and no response on the radio, you feel like you may as well be a million miles away from them. Picking up the portable sub-terminal, you look from one end of the four-side thoroughfare to another. The presence of a survivor made you need to find a keycard belonging to a member of the crew all the more urgent. Okay, let's go back to the central hub. We'll try the bridge could have, like, a keycard in there. If someone was in there at the time. As you make your way up the ladder towards the bridge, you find your progress slowed by the bulk of your spacesuit as it catches against various protrusions that stand out from the walls of the shaft. Despite having to stop multiple times to free yourself from these obstacles, you eventually see the faint outline of the entrance to the bridge above you. Clearing the remaining distance without incident, you step out from the hatch and onto the bridge. You'd been carrying a feeling of apprehension up the maintenance crawlway, as you hadn't been able to get the lack of any signs of depressurization out of your head. You knew what was probably waiting for you, unless the crew had been extremely lucky. Unfortunately, it looked like they had not. At the station left, you see the slumped figure of a young man. From his uniform and general appearance, you recognize him as Lieutenant Bashir, the officer that Cassie had been speaking to moments before the power went out on the Gun-Dog. Unlike when he'd appeared on one of the Gun-Dog's view screens, the man you saw now had clearly suffered what looks like either a small explosion or a massive electrical shock. The front of his uniform was at its best singed and at its worst completely charred, as was the skin on his hands and face. You grimace at the thought of what could have happened as you turn your attention to the captain's chair. There, slouching to the right, was the ship's captain, a rictus smile on his face, having seemingly suffered a similar fate. It seemed pretty obvious what had happened to these two, but the question remained, how? You paused for a moment. You'd almost put your hand down on the hardest headrest of the captain's chair, but you quickly move it away. If something had electrocuted these two men, then... Pretty grim, right? You almost fall backwards in surprise as Hansen's voice sounds suddenly from your helmet's speakers, and he appears on the far side of the bridge, having emerged from underneath the control station on the right. Easy, Lieutenant, it's just me. Well, I've never seen what a fried human looks like. You take a deep breath in and exhale, catching the breath that Hansen had just scared out of you. Damn it, Cruz! What the hell were you doing hiding underneath there? Following orders, sir. Remember? The plan? Hansen lazily waves the folder you'd passed on to him at you. Wait, these guys look like they've been electrocuted. Based on where they are, did you check? Listen up, Lieutenant. Power's not on. What's there to check for? You can't help but be amazed at Hansen's cavalier attitude towards the risk of a painful death via electrocution. Alright, how's retrieving the black box going? Not bad, I've managed to get most of the casing undone, but there's a lot going on in there, and this suit doesn't make it easy. What about you, find anyone? You turn to look at the captain and Lieutenant Bashir for a moment, before looking back at Hansen. Just these two so far. I've not confirmed anyone else. Guess it keeps things simple. No survivors. You get this box and we get out of here. What, do you want to hang around here a bit longer? This was a whole crew, Hansen. Some might still be alive. Guess you better get looking and find them, huh, Lieutenants? Ease up, Lieutenant. I can say this from experience. If everyone's dead, there's no use wishing they weren't. It's not gonna bring them back. But if you can find them, you should get moving. Probably not much air left anywhere on this ship, even if they're lucky. With another shrug, Hansen walks away from you, heading back to the control station he was hidden under when you entered. Let me know when we're leaving, though, alright, Lieutenant? Okay, let's take a look at these guys.